And I realized yesterday I forgot to introduce myself. I know I recognize a lot of you all from last year, but I wanted to, for those of you who might not know who I am, my name is Jamie Heron. I'm the SUNY Online Program Manager up at SUNY System. And my role is to help provide professional development opportunities for our faculty and staff who conduct, online activities, like they teach online, they support online learners, they support online and instructors. Goodness, it's going to be a long day already. And as a part of that, Otter has been a kind of staple part of my arsenal in providing that support to our campus faculty and staff. And this year we decided to focus on student voices so that we could get an understanding of how the way we present our digital materials to our students meets the needs of those students, and how we might adjust our practices to better meet those needs. So just a little housekeeping before we get started. There is captioning available should you need it. If you want to see it, you can select the closed captioning icon on your Zoom toolbar. And because we do have so many people in the room and we want to make sure that we can hear our students as they're providing their feedback, I ask that you maintain mute on your microphone. If you do have a question, please feel free to post it in the chat. Students yesterday were actually responding to questions in the chat, in addition to the questions I was asking verbally. That not all students are required to do that, by the way, but we found that was kind of helpful. And then any questions that didn't get answered, I asked a little bit later there. After the students have responded to the kind of predetermined reflective questions we're going to ask, that there is an opportunity for you to ask questions directly of the students. And I'll give you an opportunity then to come off mic by raising your hand, and then you can ask the students questions directly there. These sessions are recorded and they will be available on the Otter Institute 2024 website. And it does take about 24 to 48 hours post-recording to get those posted up on the site. It's going to be a little bit longer for the Friday session. It's probably not going to be till Monday or Tuesday of the following week. Today, we're joined by 3 students, and we're going to have Kate join us, Kurt and Deb join us. And the topic for conversation is communication and regular and substantive interaction. And for those of you who aren't familiar what RSI, or regular and substantive interaction, is, it's part of the guidelines that have been set by the Department of Education as a way of ensuring that our online courses are not simply correspondence courses. They are a way for us to interact with our students, responding to questions, engaging in activities that let students know that we are present here, that we are doing things that are predictable, that they understand when an announcement might be posted, when office hours are. We're providing them with regular opportunities for that interaction between ourselves and between students. And so that's what we're going to talk about today with our students. So John, I see your question in the chat about guidelines or rules. If you can clarify that for me in the chat, I'd be happy to answer that a little bit further for you. As I wait for John to clarify that, what I'm going to do is look for my students here in the participants list and promote them all and pin them all. So I have to stop my share, because I want to make sure that we're highlighting the students themselves and not a PowerPoint presentation. I know we're all here for the students and not for my adorable graphics. In terms of questions, yeah, I think that you should just ask your question in the chat, and then when we have the opportunity, probably close to the 4 o'clock time period, that's when you'll have the opportunity to come off mute. And to the private chat I just received, yes, I would love that. So if that's all right. I'm sorry, I missed a student on the slide, and so I'd like to include Alice in as a student here. Let me find, so Dr. Alice is going to be pinned, and we're going to pin Kurt. And we're going to add, sorry, it's going to be Deb. Oh, wait. I might be missing somebody who said she was going to be here. My apologies. I'm trying to find my list. I have too many browsers open. Of course. I'm so sorry. Can the other students raise your hand and make it a little bit easier to CK. I see. There you are.
Do you see me?
Yeah, sorry. I was looking for names and not for initials there. And then I'm just missing Deb. So when Deb comes in, she can go ahead and I know it's not Deb Spiro. Hi, Deb Spiro. Okay, so here are 3 students. We have another one who it might not be able to join us until quarter after, but the questions I have generated for today, I'm going to ask the students the questions, but also post them in the chat just in case they need to refer back to that a little bit later. But before I start asking questions, I'd love for you all to introduce yourselves. I know, Kurt, you were with us yesterday, but we do have some faculty that are here today that weren't here yesterday. So if you could all take a moment to introduce yourself, let us know what campus you're from and what your area of study is, and then also indicate what made you choose taking an online course. So we want to start in alphabetical order. We'll start with Dr. Alice, and I don't want to butcher your name. So if you want to say that once, that'd be great. Thank you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Hi, Jamie. So I am, like many online students, a very atypical student, taking online classes because I need post-baccalaureate credits. As you can tell by my gray hair, my original school going was a while ago. So for some circumstances, when you are a candidate, they want you to be recently trained through a number of courses like biology, chemistry, and anything else, sciences that one could forget. So I was in that situation and I needed several credits that were not available all at the same college. So I had to literally take classes in 3 different colleges. And one can't do that easily in person. So I had to go for the online route. And it worked very well for me. So here I am.
Well, welcome. And we celebrate gray hair here. I am too. All right. So next, how about Kurt? How about Kurt for us today?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kurt Von Bergen. I'm a hospitality student at Monroe Community College. Chose to do online courses because of the overabundance of other commitments in my life. So this works out better for me. Glad to be here today.
Thanks for joining us again, Kurt. And then we have Caitlin, which I think you prefer Kate.
Yes. Yeah,
Kate.
it's a little confusing
Yeah.
because the formal name Caitlin is with a C, and then my mom nicknamed me Kate. I don't know why, but I go to Alfred State, and my major is health information technology. And I found out about the program just through work. I work for a health insurance company, and my coworkers who are medical coders encouraged me to kind of, better myself, better my career, open up opportunities for myself. And yeah, I'm in the final year. I'm happy to be here, happy to do this. I'm not as familiar with Zoom, so that's why I think earlier I was struggling. I always use Teams, but it's just a little bit different.
And each of them has a slightly different user interface. So
Yes, it definitely does.
right. Okay. Well, today the topic of our conversation today is communication and regular and substantive interaction. And This is something that typically gets identified by students in surveys as something they are seeking in their faculty, and it's something that we tend to train on a lot. The communication tools within Brightspace, what does count or what does not count as regular and substantive interaction. And so today we're really wanting to ask students about their experiences with communication and RSI, as well as what they would like to see, what has been successful, what has not been successful, etc. So we have a series of questions that I'm going to ask, and I'll post it in the chat. And then how we did it yesterday for the 2 students joining us new today is if you wanted to respond, you can go ahead and you can either raise your hand in Zoom or you can just visually raise it. Either works. And then I'll just call on which one of you to answer. And I want to give everybody the opportunity to answer the same question, because I'm sure you all come with slightly different perspectives, and then we'll go from there. If faculty in attendance want to post questions in the chat and the students here in the room want to reply to those, that's great. But don't feel like you have to divide your attention between the two of those. We can always come back to questions later. Okay. So the first reflective question is, how important is the perception of instructor presence in your online learning experience?
Jamie, I'm just trying to figure out how to raise the hand, but I can answer that.
Yeah, great. You can, if it's easier for you, Kate, go ahead and just do this. Just raise your hand there.
Yeah.
It works out just fine. Thanks, Kate.
Yeah, that works. Okay, so how important is the perception of instructor presence in your online experience? I wrote out some responses here. Just very important. Alfred State, there are 2 primary professors, Instructor Boyle, who is on the call, I believe. She's one of them, and she's just fantastic. It's her and Professor Matheson. We all know each other by first name basis. Their experience they have, I think the biggest thing that I have written here is they have real world experience. They're just always available to answer questions. We're kind of a smaller group, so we all know each other, and I think that's really helpful.
Okay, great. So what I take from that is the perception of their presence in your course is critical. It's really important. And then making sure that they're communicating that they're available to you, like how you can reach out to them, etc.
Yes,
Kurt?
they're both very responsive.
Okay, that's good. That's good. All right, Alice or Kurt? We'll go with Kurt and then Alice.
Sure. I do think that it's important that the instructor is present and active in the course, especially with Brightspace. I wouldn't necessarily say daily announcements are the best, but just small reminders, active comments instead of just posting grades. Feedback, I think, is very important. The more they post in discussions, I think, is also a benefit to the class, showing that the professor is more involved than just grading.
Okay, great. So it seems like you want more than just a number of a grade. You want to understand why and why you earned that grade and how to improve, etc. But also you want to see them interacting in the activities that they want you interacting in as well. Okay, great. And then Alice?
I would say it depends. There are some courses in which, unless something is unclear, Brightspace alone would do it. But there are courses when you need to send an email and then you're looking forward to hear back from that email or from a certain comment, or something is unclear in an announcement and you follow up and you would like to clarify it sooner. And then it becomes very important to have a timely response. I totally agree with Kurt. When you see a number, a few lines would help a lot. And even if that happens to be an A, and a nice line will definitely make a difference, and it helps you connect with the faculty. I guess that will be my brief about communication.
Okay, great. So you're echoing that it's important, regardless of whether it's an A, to provide why it was an A. Explain why.
Well, no, not the explanation. No, let me take that back. Is
Okay.
when you are in the student's shoes, you are having a student mindset, and then moral support on that student posture definitely helps. And sometimes if you're studying for 4 or 5 courses at the same time and everything feels overwhelming and you feel that you're not going to do it, that line of yes, you did it, it really matters. So it's not about explaining the A, it's more about connecting at an additional level if you want.
Okay, so given that that positive feedback, that hey, you've got this. I see you. Yeah, I see you. I see your effort. And Kurt, you raise your hand.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, even when you get an A or, something above a 90, just a little comment of like, great work this week
Yeah.
makes a huge difference than just getting the grade.
Okay, great. That's a really insightful comment from both of you. I really appreciate that. So I'm making a note to myself. There are some tools within Brightspace that allow a faculty member to identify students who are not just struggling a little bit, but also performing well. And so there's a tool called awards or intelligent agents that allow us to reach out to those students that are, like at both sides of that spectrum. So anyway, great. Thank you for your responses there. The next question I have for you all is, what actions by an instructor make you feel supported and engaged in the online environment? So what can an instructor do to make you feel like you have support? Okay, so I'm going to go with Alice and then Kurt this time. We'll switch around the order a little bit.
Well, I can give you an actual example. So it's very common that there will be a deadline conflict. And then you may want to plan it better so you don't have to take a toll on one of the 2 courses. And you have to email the professor and ask them to give you a different deadline to make it happen for you. Or in my case, it happened that I needed certain prerequisites that I did take long ago, but I didn't want to really take again Bio 101, for God's sake. So there was a little bit of extra that required an additional communication, but also required understanding and support. And I appreciated that. And my professors understood where I came from and what my needs were. And they didn't treat me as the student I did. They treated me as the person I was and the needs I had. And that was very important for me. And I think it's important to look at each of these students as they come with a different package of needs.
So what I'm getting is when you as a student need you have, responsibilities and other things that you have to take care of, that when you express these to a faculty member, them treating you like another human being that needs maybe I can just give you an extra day, or we can but working with you makes you feel supported.
Well, it's about, I can do well in your class. I want to do well in your class. Help me do well in your class, because your exam is the same day with other exam I have. And I don't want to really take a cut in my grade because of that. Focus has to be undivided in order to perform well. So it's not because, hey, I'm turning 25 and I want to have a party and then it's the day after the party. It's something more serious than that.
That's great. So I typed verbatim what you said about I can do well in your class. I want to do well in your class. Help me do well in your class. I think that's something all of us as faculty members would do well to kind of keep in mind when our students are reaching out to us. So thank you. Thank you for that. Okay. Kurt?
I think it goes back to what I mentioned about the little messages of feedback when you're doing well. When you might be struggling, I think being very direct as to what the problem is helpful. I've had some instructors in the past say like, oh, your writing needs a little more work. Well, what parts of my writing skills need more work? You know, I guess giving that direct feedback is going to help the student more than a vague response.
Okay. And that specificity makes you feel supported and engaged.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And then Kate?
Yeah, so it's interesting that hearing other people's perspectives. Um, the extension thing that Alice was talking about, that never really occurred to me. That would be great. A lot of us who are doing online classes we work full time. So it would be helpful if someone is sick, hey, here's a couple extra days. I remember just I believe asking before if I could do extra credit. I'm not the greatest test taker, but I can write really well. I find I learn better when I write and I remember it. And I hate to say it, but when I'm made to do a presentation, I will remember what I am like presenting on because I have to, go over it so many times, rehearse it, say it out loud, and it kind of sinks in better. So kind of maybe having some more options um, for those of us who are not the greatest test takers.
That's great. And Alice, you had something to add there?
Yes, one of my professors had approached a very interesting model. He allowed 3 days that you could extend whenever you needed. And if you wouldn't use them, you would actually get a number of points extra. And it was a really, really good approach. I actually, in my case, I requested to take an exam earlier. I never requested an extension. For me, it was a matter of planning it differently, not of buying more time. But I can see how some students would make use of those days if something happens. If not, a point or two would not hurt, of course. So I think it was a really good model he approached.
That's great. That's actually something my son, some of you met my son yesterday. My son's math teacher did in high school. She gave him a certain number of get out of jail free cards. And you could use it if you had a rough week or you were sick or something like that. But at the end of the semester, if you didn't use it, you got extra credit. So that's a nice way to build in some flexibility. I love that. Thank you for bringing that up here. Obviously, people in the chat thought that was a great idea too. All right. So thank you for your responses to that question. The next one is, what modes of communication do you find most effective in online courses? And what we typically speak of in terms of communication tools within Brightspace are the Brightspace email announcements. Some people use, I forget the name of the tool, activity feed. That's the one, or maybe that's not it. But anyway, other tools that you might use within Brightspace. So what modes of communication do you find most effective for your online courses? Yeah, go ahead, Kate.
Probably just like what you were saying, the updates in Brightspace, those little notifications, I've noticed, like if you have an assignment that's due, like you'll get a reminder, hey, this is due, don't forget, or you know, you have to take an exam soon. I really like, and this is kind of more recent, within the last year, I would say, is this the live sessions, the live classes. I
Okay.
think like the check-ins, I was doing that a little bit last winter, I believe it was, for a coding class, and that was quite helpful. It wasn't every week because again, we're all kind of on different schedules. Um, I'm just trying to think some just a couple other things, but the bright space is a little bit challenging. I don't know if others have experienced that because we used to have Blackboard. So there's been a little bit of a learning curve, but it's I think finally getting used to it. But
Mhm.
yeah, those little reminders help you.
Okay.
Um, it just I think just getting the notifications in Brightspace is, if someone posts on the discussion board, sometimes you don't know that. You have to click on the link. You have to actually go to the discussion board. Whereas I think in Blackboard, if anyone posted, you would get a notification and you would know, hey, someone posted. Let me go check.
Okay, that's important too, then, understanding how to set up your notifications and where you receive those notifications. That might be something helpful for faculty to share with their students. Okay, that's good information. Thank you for sharing that. And I know Alice and Kurt put in email in the chat, but if there's anything else in terms of a communication tool, even if it's not one that's built into Brightspace that's effective, please, feel free to let us know. I know, Kurt, you were saying yesterday you were texting your professors who provide you with that phone number, and we had a little discussion afterwards. Some people are comfortable with that, others aren't. But
Yeah, I guess that's up to the instructor, but text has worked for me. Just with those two specific instructors that I've had that allowed that, it was just way easier
okay,
than using email or Brightspace to communicate. Just I sent a text once at 8:30 at night and I got a response back at 9:30, but I still got one and I really appreciated receiving it too.
okay. I was saying yesterday that I don't share my phone number, but I've used a tool called Remind that allows me to text people without either of us knowing their phone numbers, right? But it's immediate. It's a text directly to my phone, etc. So we'll talk about solutions with the faculty later, but there's some solutions that we can use to help us. Yeah, so Aaron says that they use that for communication too. See, yeah, text. I gotcha. So that can be a little bit iffy. Alice, did you want to add anything to this particular question? Or you comfortable?
For me as an online student, I'm approaching study at very weird hours. So email is almost a requirement to make everyone comfortable.
Okay. That makes sense too, because you can respond to it when you can respond to it. Okay, perfect. All right. So the next question is, what communication practices have you observed that foster a collaborative and like growth oriented, how you can improve, etc., online learning environment? I think if you can share anything that maybe one of your faculty members did that made you feel like, yes, this is us working together.
The online live sessions, even though they're so new, I found them extremely helpful because rather than having a delay in like an email, you have your resource, your instructor right there, and you can just ask, and it is like a classroom setting. Even though you're over the computer screen, you can work with other classmates, get to know them. t group work, even though again we're all remote online, that is, I think, the best way to have a support system if you're struggling with a question and say the professor hasn't answered the email just yet, or it's like a weekend, and sometimes like you like to give your instructors a couple days to respond, and also not wait till the last minute. um, so if you're like struggling with something, you can kind of just know, hey, I can reach out to so and so because we have this relationship. We met, at a live session, or we worked on this group project together. That's what I've really benefited from. And I don't think I really started doing that until probably the last year and a half, reaching out and kind of realizing, hey, I'm not as isolated. I can reach out to this person and I know they're working on the same thing because it's due in, however many days. So maybe they picked up on something more than me. And also, but like again, I said it before, the instructors are really responsive. But again, you have to understand that they need a little bit of time, because I'm sure they're getting other questions. They teach other classes. So yeah, group projects they're not for everyone. Yeah, I have noticed some people will pull the weight, but others like, you know, um, it depends on kind of who you're paired with. Who it, yeah, I understand, Kurt.
Yeah, I think that the group projects can either be great or horrible, and it partly depends on who you get teamed up with, but also what are the rules that are applied, and whether or not there's peer assessment in that. And sometimes when there's peer assessment, then people tend to kind of join up. It's an art form to creating a good group activity.
Yes, for one of the classes for the projects, I believe we had to do a peer assessment. So I think that helped a little bit.
Yeah, and if that impacts the overall grade, people tend to be a little bit more collaborative. So Alice, you have your hand raised.
One of the best, I guess, learning results from communication came from our topic discussions. And I enjoyed the topic discussions a lot more than other forms of learning. Particularly in our microbiology class, the professor would bring some out of the box questions for the class, and students would receive a number of bonus points if they would not only participate, but make some pertinent comments in that activity. So it triggered a lot of curiosity from all of us, and we understood much more than what was actually in the course content. And I think that would apply to your question about what modes of communication would be most effective. Topic discussion would be my vote.
Okay, and so additional participation in the discussion. Okay, great. I do want to welcome Deb to the student panel here. So I'm going to lift. I'm going to pin her. Hang on just a second. Let me get her pinned, and I'll pose the next question to Deb and the rest there too. All right, so now we have 4 people. Hi, Deb. Thanks for joining us. Deb had a conflict and couldn't join us until 3:15, but we appreciate you rushing to get here. We've been asking questions, and I think we're on like question 4 here. And what I'm doing is I'm posting the question in the chat, and then each of the four of you can just raise your hand, and I'll kind of call on you to respond to that question. So the next question is, how often do you expect to hear from your instructor, and in what form? And it doesn't just have to be a single form. It can be what forms there. So whoever would like to. Kurt, You can go ahead, and then Deborah, sorry
Sorry.
I cut you off, but you can go right after Kurt there, and we'll get going there.
Sure. So I like to hear from my professor at least twice a week, or either days that assignments are due, or like a day or so after they've had a chance to look at some, to say like, hey, here are some of the trends that I saw throughout your assignments, great job class with, this aspect. However, some of you need to work on this. I think that method of communication has been really great. It reminds me that the teacher is actually like there and, cares about our progress in the class and what we're learning from it.
Okay, so that's great. So in addition to, like maybe an announcement, an email posting reminding you of what things to do, you want to see like these general comments, not just about how you did it on assignment, but maybe other people were missing the exact same thing that you missed, or other people were missing something that you didn't miss, kind of thing. Just to see what other people are struggling or doing well with. Okay, great. Anybody else want to? Oh, Deb, you were going to start there.
Yeah, I actually wound up preparing like all of my answers because I knew I was going to be late. So I think the biggest thing for me is really reaching out at least once a week to remind what assignments are due. Because one of the big things that I've found across all of my classes is not all professors use just Brightspace. They use other platforms, and Brightspace may not be posted with those assignments. So using that email communication about assignments being due is very helpful when I took 6 classes last spring, so it was really hard to keep up on classes and assignments if everything wasn't in one calendar. So getting those email reminders really helped me. But I think along with what Kurt said, it's really important to know that your professors, your instructors are vested in you learning. So if you're not getting that feedback about assignments and how everybody's doing, it can be really hard. I did several assignments that I never received grades for. And some of them were advanced writing assignments that were like required and I never got a grade on. So I think, and I know I get that professors are busy. They have, multiple classes, multiple students. But as students, we have multiple classes and multiple obligations as well. So I think that the amount of feedback, at least once a week, is really important to know that our instructors are invested in us learning.
Great,
It's a
that's
pretty
good.
big deal.
Thank you. Thank you. Any, Kate or Alice, do you have something to add?
I think I would add really quick that it wouldn't be that much my need for what I want the professor to do, but is what I witnessed from other professors and I like a lot and it works so much better. And then my expectation is extended to the other professors. And then you suddenly see what doesn't work in one class only because it works so great in another class. And well, then you want to have it for all the classes.
So when you get a stellar instructor who is using all the communication tools and is exhibiting RSI, then you're like, this is how it's done. And what might not have been a problem before is now a problem. I gotcha. Okay, great. And then Kate, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just the weekly check-ins, it's pretty consistent with my professors. I'm trying to think of other things, but yeah, it's good to feel connected when we're all kind of working through the coursework independently. I do think there were a couple times when things like what Deb was saying, where stuff just wasn't graded, and you're trying to study for like a midterm or a final or an exam, and you don't have that feedback. That's really important. I think there was like a time when like things weren't graded and it was like 3 weeks past due. I mean, it's possible it could have been graded but not posted with the feedback. So That I think at that time it was just a little bit frustrating, because yes, you have the material to study, but nothing is more valuable than having the feedback from your instructor.
Right. So this next question falls right in line with the question we just asked. So how can that regular feedback that you're getting from your instructors contribute to your academic growth? And what form of that kind of communication and interaction do you find most constructive? Alice.
So this question reminded me about one interesting experience I had. For certain classes that utilize non-Brightspace platforms, students are assigned homeworks that could be reviewed before exam. And of course, that helps a lot with learning. Now, if by accident the student missed one of these homeworks, this homework is not available for review before the exam. And now, not only that something happened and you missed the homework, but now you can't even review that homework to improve your results for the exam. So it would be great if those platforms would be set in such a way that the student will be able to review everything, even if during the preparation for that exam, they didn't do all the assignments.
Okay, so I've heard of that issue too, even for all when all materials are available in Brightspace, where they close the module and you can't get back in to see something that might help you with the current module. So it sounds like having access to materials you've already gone over for the duration of the course would be helpful to you. Okay, great. Anybody else?
I'd love to go, but I don't know how to raise my hand. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
that's
like
okay.
looking, I'm like, oh my gosh, where is it?
You can do like me and just raise your hand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I struggle with that too. I just raise my hand.
Yeah, let's do this. I can see you. All right. So Deb, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I actually, I think there was another question about before, and touching on what Alice said about having access to previous assignments. So I think that's a big deal, but I also think that I had at least one professor, maybe two, that I would ask for help on a problem, and they just like gave me a cut and paste or snippet tool picture of the answers. And like if I'm having a problem with an assignment, I need help like getting through it. So because your assignments obviously go through quizzes, tests. So if I'm not getting the concept, I need that help to get through it. So I think it's important I mean, I'm sure that the instructors get a lot of feedback. So maybe if there's a way to poll who's having issues with something, and then maybe like doing an extra video of what those issues might be. I had one professor that did a discussion forum for students where they could pose questions to each other, so, and he would jump in and chime in and make sure everyone was getting and understanding those concepts. So that was a pretty big deal. So I feel like if one student's having an issue, a lot of times multiple people are going to be having that same issue. So that discussion board was a huge hit in that class. So, because we were all helping each other, and then the professor would step in and make sure that, we were all understanding it in the end. So
that's great.
Yeah.
So it sounds like one of the forms of interaction that you find most constructive is an ask a question area that's monitored by both the faculty and other students. So that
yeah, it's like discussion posts.
Yeah.
Open discussion posts. Like, yeah.
Okay.
I find those crucial in any way, because when you have discussion posts, you're hearing how other people are grasping concepts, and that can help you. So I think that's a pretty big deal to me. And for me, I know not everybody likes discussions, but I find them super helpful.
Okay, great. And then Angela put in a comment here in the chat that's getting some traction here, which says, I think Deborah is highlighting an important point. When a student has a question, telling them the answer or telling them to read the syllabus does not help. That we need to, obviously what I've already presented to you is not helpful to you. So let me try to explain it in a different way. And we talked about that a little bit yesterday with like multiple means of representation. How are the ways that I'm presenting to this to you unhelpful to you? Can I try a different way? It's almost constantly, okay, X didn't work, let's try Y, let's try U, let's try, yeah, okay, great. Anybody else want to comment on what forms of interactions you find most constructive? It's okay if you don't. We can move on to the next question. All right. The next question is, what communication practices have you noticed that hinder your learning? And it's okay if none do, but if there are any, please feel free to share them. Kurt.
So I'm kind of thinking hard about this one. So it's, we're about a week away from class, and I received the announcement that my class was open. So I went into it. Syllabus is posted, and in it there was a comment that stated, like, don't email me through Brightspace because I won't respond. If you call my office, you'll leave a message because I only check voicemails during office hours. There was something, it was very like, okay, so this person doesn't want to communicate. And I don't think that it necessarily hinders the learning, but it definitely put up a barrier of, if I need something, it better only be on Thursdays between 9 and 11, or else, I guess I'm on my own. The interesting thing about it is that it's a interpersonal communications class, so I thought that was really interesting. So I had to think for a second, but I just wanted to give that as an answer because that was what was on my mind.
Well, I think that that's an excellent answer in the negative, right? So this wasn't something that was done. This is something that's not done. And I appreciate that. And when we reflect back to what the 3 students were saying yesterday about how we can demonstrate care and let students know that we're there to support them in their learning journey, that is an indication that that might be a struggle for the student there. So Angela, I see your hand raised. I'm going to ask you to either document the question in the chat or hold on to it until we come to the end of the reflective questions, if that's okay. Thank you. All right. Anybody else, Alice, Kate, or Deb, want to answer the question about what communication practices have you noticed that hinder your learning? Deb, then Kate.
I think that probably with online learning, honestly, I feel like at some point it has to become universal. I think there's a lot of issues with taking classes, and like Kurt said, that professor specifically only said this, this time, that's the only time I'm going to do it, and it's only going to be email. At some point, I think it has to be universal because we have, I know it's online learning, so it always has to be like either email or Zooms or something like that, or on Brightspace only. And I mean, for me, I feel like we're online learning, we're already using Brightspace. It really should be Brightspace. That's where our professors should really be focused on communication, because that's where we're supposed to be doing all of our work, because it's online. So it makes sense to have one universal way to communicate between students and instructors, because then you have all of your classes and you don't have to worry about logging into multiple sites to find the answer to a question or try to reach out to your professor. I think that would just make things so much easier. At some point, maybe it could happen.
I love that attitude. Okay, that's great. And you're getting a lot of yes in the chat there. So Kate and then Alice.
Yeah, with Brightspace, I think I was saying this before, I would post in the discussion board, even a question to my professor, and they would not realize. So I would have to email them and say, hey, just so you know, this, I posted in the discussion board post first, because that's what they ask us to post in the discussion board first before you email. And but then they don't notice that it's there. So it's like, I don't know. It's a little frustrating.
Sure, of course. Of course. So you were following their written instructions and they were not following up with their own protocols or policies. I gotcha.
I don't know if it was that. I just don't know if they just, if Brightspace didn't, again, give them a notification that it was even there. I don't know where that lack of communication is, but it seems like it would be like repeated discussion board posts where I'm trying to do the right thing, posting my question so that the whole class can see, and I'm not just emailing the professor directly.
Right.
And it was just like, I do a screenshot and say, hey, I asked the question on Friday night, and it's been like 3 days. Did you see it? And so that was definitely something that was quite frustrating for me.
I can hear that. Alice, how about you?
Listening to Deb's comments, I recalled a very interesting instance with one of the classes that had an amazing professor and an amazing content. And as a consequence, it was offered in multiple colleges. And this professor was so nice, offered the cell phone to text and follow up timely. And it was amazing, only that it was so difficult to track what college is the student from and what class is the student from. And all these courses and all these structures basically had different deadlines and different assignment sequences. So that was because the colleges had different term dates. So it started at a different date. Then, of course, it followed a slightly off track. So I think that communication, even though was meant to be really fast and really efficient, was hindered by the fact that I couldn't be identified who I was from where I was, because we didn't use that universal communication system that was Brightspace. If that will happen through Brightspace, the professor would see immediately what specific course is this and what student is this and from what college. So there is a huge benefit in using Brightspace communication.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I see your hand raised, Kelly. I'm going to ask you to hold on to your question until the end of the reflective questions, or post it in the chat if you would. Okay, thank you. All right, appreciate that feedback there. Let's move on and say, what does regular and substantive interaction look like to you in the context of online learning? And just to reiterate like a brief definition of what RSI is, it's the faculty member demonstrating through like regular communication, maybe weekly announcements, maybe holding 2 or 3 office hours a week, sending out emails on a predictable basis so that you as a student know when you can anticipate having access to information or communication with your faculty members. So that's what RSI is. It can be demonstrated in lots of different ways. So what does that look like to you in the context of online learning? So it sounds like a couple of you had professors that provided those synchronous office hours or the drop-ins. So that would be one example of regular and substantive interaction. Is there something else that your professor would do on a regular basis that let them know that let you know that you were there, or they were there, not you, you're there. But yeah, Deb.
So I had at least one professor, but I think it was more. Probably at least every other week, I got an email saying, hey, don't forget, I'm here. How are things going? You know, just let me know if you have any questions. So just that extra reach out saying, don't forget, I'm here. And then again, on that one professor that had the discussion board, like we had regular discussion boards, and then ask the professor, and then I think he called it a student discussion room or something like that. And that I think was super helpful. But it's only helpful to the extent that the professor's going to monitor it as well. So that's, you know, and he monitored that. So he was very responsive to everything on it. So.
Kurt, did I not post it in the chat? I totally didn't. That was my bad. I thought it in my head, but I didn't do it. So what does regular and substantive interaction look like to you in the context of online learning? And so those two examples that you gave, Deb, are perfect. That email that you were receiving every other week, you could kind of come to anticipate that over the course of the semester, as well as those discussion boards that you could rely on your faculty member being present in. So anybody else? Yeah, go ahead, Kurt.
Yeah, I would just say that like regular feedback, constant, I guess I shouldn't say constant, but as much communication as they can afford to give us is the best approach, I think. I had one professor in particular who it was a purely discussion-based course, but it was one of the best classes I think I've ever taken.
And what made it the best? Because of the investment of the faculty member in those discussions, or?
Yeah, the professor commented in every single student's thread and participated in each conversation. So it was a current issues and trends course. So each student had to post an article with 3 like references and sources, and then put our opinion on it. And then other students had to respond to a certain number, but he would jump into every single discussion and make comments and feedback, and then also link, you know, that student's article or resource to another student's article and say how those 2 trends actually intertwine for, you know, the industry and how we can like bounce off of each other with ideas. And he continuously had us just improving our methods of research or our knowledge base for the topics that we were discussing. And it was great because I don't know, I don't know how it would have gone if he didn't participate at all.
Okay, great. That is really helpful. Alice or Kate, do you have anything to add? Yeah, Alice or Kate. Sorry.
Yeah, just like what Kurt is saying, just when professors are responding in discussion boards, emailing regularly, that's great. I've not really had an issue with any of my professors with that. I did like what Kurt was saying. There was one professor I had when I first started. It was like a pathophysiology class, and he commented on every single post. And it was just like you could tell that, you know, it was a really tough class. But I was very grateful that he was taking the time to read what we had to say and respond. I mean, it was encouraging that he wanted us to succeed and to learn and realize, hey, like, if you made a mistake, like this is what you did wrong, and there was feedback. But again, you know, it's a tough class, pathophysiology, so it was a struggle, but you know, he helped you get through it and he wanted to see you succeed.
So that presence in the discussion demonstrated that RSI, that care, that investment. Okay. Alice, anything to add? It's okay if you don't.
Not necessarily, but now that you asked me, what came first to my mind was the sense of humor in our announcements. Some professors have a skill to make it funny, and it becomes so engaging and is, I guess, very productive because it clicks and it stays with you and you will remember, and the chance of you being more organized and more productive as a result is much higher. So yeah, a little bit of humor helps.
Okay. That's really good feedback. Something a little hard to teach, but definitely something that's appreciated when it's done well, right? Okay, perfect. All right. The next question is, and I'm going to post it in the chat. I can do it. Can you describe a scenario where instructor interaction significantly influenced your perspective or approach to learning? And Kurt, I think you gave a perfect example, and maybe Deb, you did too, about or no, it was Kate that gave the example of the professor being in there responding to every single post. Kind of that instructor interaction significantly changed your perspective of what that course is going to be like. Just like the email that you, or the syllabus you just read, that might determine what that interaction is going to be like. So can you describe a scenario where that interaction significantly influenced your perspective or your approach to learning? Deb.
So I guess when you say interaction, is it like I had one professor that literally posted video lectures every week and sometimes multiple video lectures. So is that maybe what you might be like? Sure. I had multiple professors that did that last semester, and I'm not sure I would have gotten through one of the classes without them, because it was an extremely difficult course, and it was a lot of calculations. And if you got one calculation wrong, your end number was going to be wrong. So yeah, you really needed that. And throughout the videos, it was always, he did examples of every single homework problem so that you were walking. He didn't use the same numbers, but he was giving you like, this is how you do it. And he was like, if any of these concepts, you're struggling with them, reach out to me. We'll go over one together. So he was very open to meeting, and that's, I think, Kurt, that's hard that your professor said that, because that right from the beginning, you're like, oh gosh, I can't ever reach out to this guy or this instructor. So having a professor constantly tell you, that you can reach out to them is such a huge deal. It really is.
All right, that's great. And I would say that your example that you provided, Deb, is a perfect interaction or example of an interaction. That professor took the time to make those videos and shared it, and that changed your experience and helped you learn better. So I would say that was a perfect example. Alice, you have your hand raised.
I guess my feedback on this will be about assessments, especially quizzes. We know some disciplines make it a temptation to look up the answers online. And because of that, professors are limiting the time of the quizzes. And you often see a quiz allotted for 10 minutes to cover 10 questions. And I totally understand why. However, when you have one or more than one of these questions count no less than 100 words, that becomes quite challenging to answer in a minute. And honestly, my take, and here I'm coming to your question, was literally to just gamble that question up front. I would not even read it. I would literally flip a coin and go with the answer. And it was a bad approach, but this is how I secured my time for the other questions. I think is mindful to try to wear the student's shoes when you're trying to prevent cheating, because you may trigger them to give it up altogether. This is what happened to me. I didn't want to prove myself not cheating, but I didn't care about that point any longer. Okay. It was unreasonable. And well, for a quiz or two is fine, but I guess for more quizzes or as a regular practice, it becomes demotivating.
All right, so I think that's key. A lot of us use the timing, right, to prevent that or kind of discourage that cheating, but we also have to weigh that against how demotivating it is for you. That's a good word to use for that too. And
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I made the suggestion to the respective professor to consider 11 questions instead of 10 and make one of them the long one, make it a bonus. If someone is that fast in reading or that lucky, at least they could actually take advantage of that question. Maybe it was a good question, but for me personally, literally, I did not even consider reading it. And that was bad, I guess, for both sides.
Yeah, you were trying to improve your chances of success, right? Yeah, okay. Anybody else have some response to this particular question? Or we can move on? All right, I know I'm holding you past the allotted hour, but we're getting such good responses from you all. I appreciate it. I have, oh my, way more than this, but how can instructors capitalize on opportunities to enhance communication and interaction? So what are things that instructors can do that would enhance their communication or their interactions with you? Like, I know that we as faculty often say, well, students don't respond to emails. And in a conversation with my son last week about communicating with students via email, he says you have to give them a direct action to take. Otherwise, they might not respond to you at all. So what are some things that you might advise a faculty member to do to encourage, that would result with you communicating back? Kate.
I don't have a ton of issues with my instructors communicating. Like they're very responsive. I don't know if I'm an outlier here because our program is so small. But just like the fact they're enthusiastic about health information technology. They just encouraging checking in every week. I know it's not popular, but I really like the group work because it allows for connections and networking. But like along with group work, there's people who, they don't pull their end of the weight. But by having like a peer evaluation, I think that could be really helpful, but making sure you're kind of getting to know your classmates because one day you might end up working with them. It's just yeah. I think just my instructors do a great job though with checking in. I don't really have a criticism, I would say, for that.
Okay.
But it is really important to be doing weekly check-ins. And if better, just I don't like having a meeting, not necessarily like an actual class, but just a meeting, say, hey, especially at the beginning of the semester, maybe just like get together. Doesn't necessarily have to be over Teams. It could just be like a thread. I mean, we do that every semester, but we all know each other so well, it's kind of repetitive. So just checking in. Communication is just key.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Deb, Kurt, you had your hand raised, but I think you put it down. So I'm going to go with Deb. And then if you want to say something, feel free. Okay.
I love what Kate brought up because my last semester, almost every single one of my professors held a Zoom meeting at the beginning of the semester to go over the syllabus to make sure no one had questions about it. And that made me feel so connected to that class and that professor. Like I felt like that one Zoom made me feel like I could go to that professor and ask anything. So that was a pretty big deal. And there was another professor, I think the semester before that offered a Zoom once a month. It was a 1 hour Zoom once a month. It wasn't required. He set it up for like a 7 to 8 o'clock at night. He said, if you show up, you show up. You don't, you don't. So, and sometimes, like he would only get 2 or 3 at every one. I went to every one because I felt like if I went, I might pick up on something that, I might be missing. So
Right.
that's a pretty big deal.
Right. Yeah. So for students who signed up for an asynchronous course, sometimes that synchronous component can be really connecting. Okay. Anybody else have a comment on this question here? Okay. Oh, Alice, go ahead.
Since it's the last question, I thought I would mention, I realized from a student perspective that everything we are commenting is not always easy to take by our professors. And I would like to share something that perhaps is not necessary, but I want to do it. I taught myself in academia for 15 years. And I had a hard time reading my students' feedback. And it took to me to be a student at this moment in time in my life to understand what the students needed. And I believe that going back right now, I would approach everything differently. It is impressive how much it matters to really have your hand held through, even though you don't really need it, even though you're grown up enough to do it on your own. When you're labeled as a student, you behave as a student. So you are a little bit of an older child, if you want. And I think that interaction, to feel that someone has your back and someone is there for you, makes all the world of difference.
So this mirrors the conversation we had yesterday. We kept coming back to this whole thing about faculty letting the students know they care, that they're invested, changes to a large degree your experience in your class. It's not the course materials as much as the instructor's presence that makes a difference. All right. Well, with that, I think that's a great place for us to end our questions for the students here today. And so I'm going to offer you all can stay here in the session if you'd like to listen. But the next hour is for us as faculty to look at or review the questions and the responses, and then figure out how we can respond, what we can do in our own practice that would meet those needs. So I want to thank you profoundly for joining us today. And I know some of you are signed up for later sessions this week, and I can't wait for that. But you'll see things coming through in the chat of appreciation from all our faculty here. So feel free to join us for the next session, but then don't feel obligated to stick around either. So that's up to you again. Thank you for your time. All right, so I'm going to unpin the students. Thank you so much. And then I am going to share a document I started yesterday for this Otter Institute, and I'm going to share the link with you just shortly, but hold please, if you will. Share screen. All right, so this is a really long document, but what we had yesterday was the day one, first week of class. These are the questions that were asked. These are the different perspectives that got shared. And then I started adding in some potential solutions with links to materials that will help faculty kind of follow up with those solutions. So, like using the course calendar. So here's a couple of links to help you use the course calendar, etc. And I'm going to share this with you all here. And you all have an option to comment, but not to actually edit the document. But you can join me here as I pop on down to day 2. And here we have, sorry, I put in lots of spaces here just to make sure that I had all of the information that the students provided here. So I can see more people joining in here, and I'm hoping for an anonymous otter. Nobody's an otter today. That would have been great though. So anyway, we have, the first question was, how important is the perception of instructor presence in your online learning experience? And it sounds like everybody thinks that it's really important. And as you could get a sense throughout the whole hour of our students talking, it sounds like that's almost more critical to them than good course material. It's the what's my instructor bringing out of me, and what am I connecting with my faculty member about those things. So some of the solutions comes down to your own teaching practice, right? Making sure that you are available, that you're communicating your the ways that students can communicate effectively back with you, etc. So one in particular that popped out to me was some responding to direct questions or communications is important, and providing constructive feedback that's positive and encouraging. And I know a couple people like seconded the mention of intelligent agents and awards for this in particular, but I'm not sure if everyone's aware of awards and their function or intelligent agents and what they can do within Brightspace. I wanted to get a sense of what people thought about using intelligent agents or awards in their courses might be. If you want to, raise your hand, come off mute, post something in the chat, please feel free. So Carol is saying she wants to add that it might make sense to create a dedicated space for questions and course comments. So a lot of courses I've seen have an ask a question discussion that is solely for questions that's not related to a specific gradable activity, right? That ask a question area stands alone. And the nice thing about that is ask a question area is that other students are monitoring that chat as well. So if the professor's not awake at 11:30 at night, another student who might be and has the answer to that question could post that. So sorry, I'm responding to a question in the chat. So I did get a request to show what that looks like, the intelligent agents or the awards. So let me pull up my Brightspace course and I can show you intelligent agents. Now, intelligent agents and awards, it's a whole hour-long workshop. And I do have a full video of that, and I have some other helpful information about that. But one of the things that we can do with intelligent agents is identify students who, say, for example, I could tell Brightspace, identify students who scored a 95 or above on this quiz. And it will identify students that scored above a 95 on that particular quiz. And it can either provide you with a list of those students, or it can automatically send an email out to those students. And so it might be automated, but it can be made to appear that it was intended directly for that student through the use of that replace string we were talking about yesterday, that first name replace string. And so it would then automatically send that kind of positive reinforcement out to your students. In the same vein, you could also identify students who performed maybe lower than a 75 in that course. And that email could contain links to maybe your tutoring center, or maybe to the resources that the student might want to review in order to improve their understanding of that material, et cetera. Or maybe it will open up or give them access to additional study materials, et cetera. So I just want to show you what one of those intelligent agents might look like. I have a list of them here. So here, this one is a score on a gradable activity. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. I created this, this intelligent agent that will do nothing, because this one does nothing. Let me find one that does something. Hold, please. This one. So this one is going to identify students who have not submitted to a folder. So this agent is going to identify students who haven't submitted to this particular assignment by this particular date, and it's going to send them an email reminding them to submit. And so agents can do all sorts of things that are happening behind the scenes, where once you've set them up, you don't have to worry about them anymore. It's going to take care of some of these regular and substantive interactions for you, to kind of reduce your workload, but also help your students feel more connected. It's identifying when they're doing well, it's identifying when they're doing poorly, et cetera, et cetera. We can also use things like awards. And in this instance, you could create awards like this one, which is, where is my cake one? this one is, oh, thank you, Donna, for that. This one will provide the award to students who have, what's the criteria? I didn't set any. Sorry, it's been a long time since I've used my awards. But you can set up awards to be delivered, either a certificate or a little badge to students. So maybe if they post more than 5 times in a discussion forum, and the minimum requirement is 3, they can receive an award for being a super poster. And that can be that positive reinforcement to get them to post additional times. But again, this is one of those things where you do a little bit of front-loaded work and you set that up for each discussion, and then you're providing positive reinforcement to lots of students all at the same time without you having to do anything every single week. So I will make sure to provide you with some information about those intelligent agents and awards in this area. If anybody else wants to add something in a comment, please feel free there. So Stephen was saying, I was pleasantly surprised by how many students said, thank you for sending the note of encouragement about my good quiz grade when he'd used intelligent agents to send notes. That's such great feedback to hear. The students don't just want to get a grade. They want to know that they're doing well, that you see them, that you see their effort, and that they matter. So Lou, you have a question about certificates.
Yes, awards are enabled on our system, but certificates are not. And they look like a better solution for a certain class. The question is, does anyone know first what it takes to get something like that enabled? I've been trying to work through our local people, but so far it's been months now we've been trying to do that and haven't achieved it. And second, what it would be really nice would be able to access a what would I call it, a testing system just to demonstrate the value to help motivate the enablement and to make sure that it achieves what we want to achieve. Is there a system in the SUNY facility that can be used for something like that?
So like a sandbox.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So both of those things are things that are controlled at the campus level. There are some settings that are controlled at the DLE or the digital learning environment level, at the system level. But each campus can indicate which tools or resources are going to be available at any given time to their faculty. So I would encourage you to continue your outreach to the distance learning team on your campus. And I wish I had a better answer for you, although I would say probably this week and next week are the worst times for distance learning professionals on campuses, because the back to start of the semester is really rough on people. I'm sorry I can't give you a more positive answer there, Lou. John, you have your hand raised.
Yes, thanks. I got a question on the replacement strings. I like to use the first name as much as I can. Does that work in emails too, Brightspace emails? The problem but let me see if there's a problem. When the students get the copy of the Brightspace email and say in their Buffalo State email system, which is Outlook, does it show first name or their real name? Because I think it shows the first name, which is off-putting if that's the case. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so their preferred name versus their perhaps legal name?
No, they actually see the replacement string with the brackets where it says first name instead of their name. Yeah.
Okay. So I think what you're referring to, we have to use language really carefully around Brightspace email. So what they're receiving in Outlook is actually a notification. It's not an email.
Right. But it's a copy of the Brightspace email.
Right. It's a notification of that email, in which case that replace string, which works for a Brightspace, is not working in the notification.
Right.
So Interesting.
Is
I
there a
hadn't thought of
workaround?
that. It does work in the Brightspace email, but apparently it doesn't work in the notification of said email.
Right. So when they get the notification in Outlook, it just says in brackets first name.
First name. Okay, that's a great point, John. It's not one that we can fix at the system level. That's one of the challenges of the DLE, having each campus have a different email solution on their own campus for their student and faculty emails. Good point.
So consequently, I don't use it in emails because if I was receiving that email, it would be off-putting to me, even though, because a lot of students don't realize it's notification, not a real email. No matter what I say or how many times I say.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Okay, that's a great point, John. And I always encourage people to use that in email and those intelligent agents. But now I have to rethink that now that it's been brought to my attention that the notification doesn't take on that replace string. And now, have you ever been told something and it kind of makes you reframe a whole bunch of things and your mind gets really, really cluttered really fast? So that's where mine's at right now. So, thanks, John. All right. Lisa, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment about using the awards. So I've been using them in my classes for quite some time, and I just started using them to see how the reaction was from students, and they just absolutely love to get an award. So I create a checklist in my module 1 of step 1, 2, 3. I think there's 6 steps of what to do to, have a successful start to my class. When they complete those, I give them a little award, and I don't tell them they're going to get it, so that they log into Brightspace and they see it, and then they're so excited when they get them, and then they ask how they can get more. So, a little bit of time on my part seems to be a big impact on students, especially when I, really like to do anything I can to set the stage for success. And I started to do them in our Optimizing Digital Learning course, which some of you may be aware of because it was the that was the award winner for the effective practices at this past year's summit. And we do that for faculty who go through there, and we surprise them too. We don't tell them they're going to get, every time they finish the work for a module, they get a badge. And then when they finish the course, our capstone project, then I give them a certificate for the course. And they literally ask me, oh my God, you didn't give me one for mod 3 or whatever it might be. So it's a really good way to show faculty how when they're in the shoe, when they're like being the student, how much that little bit of gamification, if you will, is motivating to them. And so I do it by, teaching faculty when they're playing the student, how motivating it could be. And then that's kind of how I get more faculty to start to do these little things in their class. I do a training for faculty on humanizing your online course. And some of these little things in there are the kind of things that I'll showcase that I do. We like to practice what we preach. So we try to incorporate those in our course, not only for the training course for faculty, but for students. And it really takes seconds to set up. And I think it has a really big impact on them being motivated. So I would encourage you to give them a try or go over the training that Jamie's already done, or, look at some of the YouTube videos that exist for that.
Yeah, I use intelligent agents and awards in my own teaching practice, and similar to you, Lisa, in our asynchronous modules for faculty about Brightspace, we also have some awards in there that's come in. Some of them are like Easter eggs. You'll never know until you've completed something and you get this award. It's surprising, and some, like people can anticipate receiving them. And, my students have reported that it's really effective. Like, oh, I didn't realize I was going to get this, like, in addition to a 100 in my discussion, I'm also going to get this cute little badge that I did something of excellence. It calls, it's, I don't know, it's not a participation award. It's actual an award for your efforts, and it's simple to make and quick and easy, and then they translate to the next semester too. So all that front-loaded work pays off. So I'm going to second Lisa's encouragement of the use of those. I'd also like to mention that Tim indicated that he thinks at their end that the replace strings do work in their email. So I'm that's true. So we'll check that out because I really do like using those replace strings. And Lisa, do you still have a comment as your hand just raised? Okay.
I'm good. Sorry about that. Thank you.
No, that's okay. So
James,
Angela,
I just want to point out that the strings for an email is different than the strings that you do in the content areas inside the course. So they need to be aware. That's why I like the videos in YouTube, because it explains to them the difference between an email message that's going out through an artificial or the intelligent agent has to have a different string if it's going out to their email to like pull in their
so
first name, their last
you
name.
mean so the first name has to be a different replace string?
Yeah, it is a little bit different. So, like I said, that's something that I learned from the YouTube video, and I have found that the regular just first name inside the brackets do not work if it's going out in an email. It has
Okay,
to
I
be a
need to
specific
know
string.
that. Do you know the replace string off the top of your head, Donna?
I don't, but I can look it up and bring it out in tomorrow's meeting.
Thank you. All right, that is very helpful information to know. I was always under the impression that the standard first name works, but if I have to change some things. That's
Not
true.
with the intelligent agents, but that's okay.
Okay. All right. Okay, great. All right. So as I scroll down through some more of those comments, the question that we got some good feedback about was, how often do you expect to hear from your instructor? And I think the responses that we got from the group fit along what the requirements for RSI are, correct? So like once or twice a week, just send an announcement, send me an email, etc. But also the providing timely feedback. So I'm reading through these comments, and some of these things that the students are asking for, like that timely feedback, letting me know that something's due, I haven't submitted, I've forgotten it. So much of this is can be accommodated, can be made more efficient by using these intelligent agents and release conditions and awards, etc. So we can set up our courses to do so much of this course management for us so that we can spend more of our time doing what our students were saying they find helpful, which is engaging in those discussions. So did we have any comments about that? I see Lisa saying that she was surprised they said once a week was enough. And okay, so Tim just broke my heart a little bit. so that it doesn't work. Thanks for ruining my day, Tim. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. I'm really tired apparently. So and then Alex had some comments. So if anybody wants to come off mute, please feel free. It's to comment on what the students' perspective on what's enough and our perspective on what's enough. Kelly.
Yeah, I think that's where I sort of came in and wanted to say something at that, because of what I heard, and it sort of gave some validation for what I'm doing. I'm always trying to, make sure that I'm communicating my students in a way that they feel validated and they're feeling those answers, feeling that they're being their questions are being answered. And what I liked about one of the comments there is that idea that you're using the Brightspace email, because on my end, it provides for me the information that I need for where that student is and which class and assignment we were working on. Because sometimes I have 5 different classes or 3 different classes, and if they just send an email that goes to my regular email, time is lost as you ask, which class are you in? And also that sort of the other thing happens is they're like, well, how come you don't know me, right? It's and students want to be recognized, as a even on an online situation. So having that in my Brightspace, I can automatically know exactly which class they are, the assignment that they're talking about, because some of them will just say, I need help on this assignment, right? And Brightspace helps me do that. So that's why I funnel it through there. It's nice to know that one of the participants sort of confirmed that. The other thing that I have found, is that if I let the students know what my schedule is for answering, right? If I say, I will answer questions, within 24 hours, right? They are they accept that, right? I also, I'm not a 24-hour teacher, even though students might be 24-hour students. And so I let them know that these are times when I'm not going to be there, and letting them know that these are times when I won't do that. What I put it down there, I say, Friday night is date night. I've been married for 37 years, and my wife knows something, and I get good responses. They say, thank you for letting me know. That's really good that it's important for that, and they let me that it lets them know that I have a life. They respect that, but that I will get to it as soon as possible. So setting those expectations and boundaries, they are very it works well together between me and them.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that, Kelly. One of the document templates that we have available to us within Brightspace is a meet your facilitator, which you can change to meet your professor or meet your instructor, whichever term you prefer on your own campus. But on that particular document template, it encourages you to let them know your availability, what's the best method for communication. And I think as long as we're setting those expectations, like I do something similar. I tell them I have no technology Saturdays. And that I don't respond to things after 9 p.m. because I'm old and I fall asleep at 9 o'clock. So what I let my students know is if by chance you email me at 9:05 on Friday, there's going to be a longer window of time I'm not going to respond because I don't respond again until like 10 o'clock on Sunday morning. But for the rest of the time, they should expect a 24-hour turnaround. But that alleviates that anxiety for students, letting them know, setting that expectation of when I am and am not available. Just like you can't expect anybody to work 7 days a week. I don't expect my students to work 7 days a week, et cetera. But as long as everybody understands what the parameters are, what the rules are, everybody can feel a little less anxious. So Angela, you have your hand raised.
Hi, let me see if I can multitask and turn my hand down while talking. I think that one of the things I'm always trying to play with is kind of like the Goldilocks, right? Like where's the just right with communication that I have been an observer on a lot of colleagues' classes, and I'm like, whoa, you got to leave them alone, guys. Like, leave them alone. Like you can't send them, organize your stuff. You can't send them 5 emails a week. It's too much. They don't have time to read it. And using language like they don't read it, if you bombard them with 5, perhaps they get the impression that whatever you're sending isn't that important if you needed to send 5 different ones. So one of the things that I've really engaged with the intelligent agents about, and it's not even like a super high tech way to use them, is timed messages for things that don't need my deeply authentic voice. For instance, due dates, right? Hey guys, this is coming up. Don't forget this. Hey, we have a short week this week. Those sorts of things. I actually past Angela, did a favor for future Angela when I was fixing something. I'm like, what is this? Why does this announcement have the wrong date? I'm like, oh, wow. Thanks, me. I put those in there when I was building my class 2 months ago and I forgot, but they were simple things that had to do with due dates that aren't going to change, and they were fast and streamlined, and it has made my to-do list easier. I have a fairly large and involved daily to-do list, and for a thing about due dates, it's just automated and in there. So I highly encourage anyone to use it for that, and especially if you're traveling or whatever it is. if you want a consistent time. As far as my comment about some of the strings being a little bit creepy, I really try to make sure that they know I'm a person and they're having a human experience with me. And one of the things that is not exactly in line with RSI to the letter is that I like to send announcements out at different times because I'm a person and I want them to know I'm a person. And even though they're intelligent agents, sometimes it's 9, sometimes it's 6:30. You can't do weird times like 6:21, but I purposely have them staggered because I want it to be a little bit more human. And I've received some critiques on that it makes it less regular, which I'm doing it on purpose. Yeah. I'm purposely less regular because I want them to know I'm a person, right? And I'm paying attention to them. And I just wondered what the gang kind of thought of that as we find ways to use AI or intelligent agents to streamline things, I'm happy to have AI do whatever AI can do better than me, but it can't be Angela better than me. And I want my students to know that Angela is there in the most authentic way, even if I'm using AI. So kind of thinking about what regular and substantive means to a thoughtful implementation of, hi, I'm here, I'm a person for learning. Just kind of want to throw that out.
Yeah, so I think you brought up an interesting point about what you're doing to communicate with your students. You're establishing your presence, and yet it's still falling outside the definition for RSI. And so in that case, like I personally add tons of ad hoc announcements throughout the course, right? I have my PAT ones that get released every Monday morning at 9 a.m. because that fits the RSI definition. My students can predict that every Monday at 9 a.m. they get the announcement that says, this is what we have this week, and here are links to all of those things. But then I also like to add in additional things like, did you see this in the news? This relates directly to this topic. And so I think you can meet both of those preferences about letting them know that you're there, that it's not a bot teaching this course, right? But also find ways to make it so that it's predictable. Even if the prediction is that my professor always posts 3 announcements in a week. And you could change the times, but they anticipate 3 in a week. That's part of the predictability there, if that makes sense.
I agree. And I feel like regular is super easy to do, but substantive is not. And I need substantive. They need substantive. And the regular kind of is just there. But as far as things, John made a comment on like, oh, students are like too much contact. They don't like too little. It's really hard to find that Goldilocks. Yeah. And it's really hard to make sure that we're doing whatever's federally required for RSI, which of course I'm doing at the most basic level, not an issue. But I don't want to be predictable as an instructor. I want my course to be predictable to navigate, right? I want it to be consistent and organized. But if it's 10 p.m. and I read a cool article, I like to send them out, right? Whatever it is. And so I think that in the name of RSI, there's a lot of boring going on and a lot of R and not a lot of S and I. And I think that as we move forward with training on this, I think we need to focus on the S and the I rather than, you could really check the RSI box just fine with an intelligent agent sending out a copy and paste from your syllabus every Monday. Check. I mean, and I believe that's unfortunate because that is not substantive interaction. That's regular. And I think that regular is easy to measure. Substantive interaction is not. And therefore we focus on the regular. And I find that to be tricky.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying there. Kelly, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, bringing up the idea of announcements, not just emails, right? There's a lot of ways in which we can interact in Brightspace in order that they feel that we are communicating with them in in a regular pattern and filling those needs. But we know the ebb and flow of our courses. We've been teaching them, some have taught for the last 24 years in online, and we know where the hiccups are. We know where the problems are, and so while we can send out the regular, this assignment is due, or this is the packet that's available, I send out the ones that are sometime during the week saying, and it can be an announcement rather than an email that just says, hey, have you done this? Have you checked on this, right? And those little, again, reminders that checking in, the students feel that you're very much engaged. And I know that I'm letting it go to a program that says this comes up at this time, but I know that students typically do have problems at that time, right? And those students, are very appreciative that, those reminders are sent out in between those, regular, packets that we send out at the beginning of the week or the end of the week.
That's great. All right. Any other comments on this particular question? I'm going to go through the next couple of questions to see if anything, where I know we're running low on time. So one of the things that struck me in the conversation today was about instructors participating in discussions. And I think this is another, to use Angela's phrase, Goldilocks moment. Because when we talk about creating great discussion questions and engaging in good discussions with our students, there's always a word of caution that we don't want to impose ourselves too much in those discussions, so much so that we squash the interaction between the other students, between themselves. And we also don't want to post a question and then only grade it without providing any feedback, guiding the conversation, making corrections during the course of the week, right? Et cetera. So I'm wondering from the audience here, where is that balance point? Do you adjust it every semester based off of your students and how they're participating in the discussions? Do you have a kind of a blanket rule? I respond once to every student throughout the discussion, regardless. I might respond more, but at least once to every student. Do you say I just respond to randomly 3 students? Like, what are people's practices that seem to resonate with their students? Maybe things might be coming up in chat. For me, like in my introductory responses, I respond to every post and almost every single reply, but I don't maintain that throughout the semester. But I just want, in particular, that one to let people know I've read your introduction or I've listened to your introduction, etc. But so Angela's saying I've tried many of these approaches and students seem to like them all. Right? Which one's right? Okay, so John is essentially saying that he models the practices in discussions that he wants to have his students engage in. Todd's using the Bill Pells, man, that's a blast from the past. Stay out unless there is a flaming or some type of tomfoolery, but I do provide mucho comments when I grade. Okay. Maureen, I pop in a few questions to steer the discussion when it's getting too quiet or getting off track. So you go in and you make the course corrections, make some connections for them, etc. So Todd, you're referring actually to the school of thought in discussions that I was raised on. Like, don't go in there. You're going to restrict communication. But when I listened to what the students were saying, that old line or that old practice, I'm wondering if that's what students really want. And so I just was curious what other people are experiencing. So Angela's saying I have a group of questions due Wednesday and then post customized follow-up questions that push the discussion forward, encourage them to cite resources. It's hot. Me too. Me too. I'm willing to change. Alex.
Hey, everybody. It kind of depends on how you set up the design of your discussion. So if the expectation is that it's student-led discussions or that students play the primary role in the interaction, and it's clear to the learners that that's how you run your discussions, then that Bill Pell's method functions, can function well, especially if you're monitoring, like, I don't remember who said that, but it was Todd, right? You know, so if you're monitoring to make sure that things don't get off track or there's no tomfoolery, as Todd mentioned, I think it's all about the expectations. But I do think that, and I'm sorry I was late and missed what the students were saying, but I think from what I gathered from what you were saying, Jamie, is that they were talking about wanting to have interaction with the instructors. And I think that's natural and typical, that the students do want to know that you're there, that you're real, that you're listening and seeing and hearing them, and that you're also guiding and responding and facilitating things. And so if that's how you run your discussion, where you do interact with the students, you know, that's all in the expectations of the activity. You set that up with how you describe the activity to the students, that you are going to be in there and interacting, guiding, and responding. So to me, it's all about how you set the expectations for the students and what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to do it.
Thanks. Erica, you have your hand raised.
Can you hear me okay? Okay, I just wanted to piggyback on what Alexandra said. I think the expectations to the discussion forums are really important. I try to create that rapport with my students during the introduction. So that first intro discussion piece, and we do video introductions, we require that. So I respond in video to all of my students. But then I also think throughout the semester, maintaining, if it's a student to student forum, then I think it's great that we kind of sit back and monitor. But when it's that formative feedback, maybe for a module or a weekly wrap up, I might not respond to each individual student's posts, but I might summarize what I have seen the theme be throughout their discussion, or if there were things that they felt were still unclear, try to hit those points in my sort of sum up the week or feedback Friday.
Great. And Erica, you just mentioned something that I think not surprised me a little bit. No, I'm going to be honest. It surprised me a little bit that students might want to hear more about how they're doing relative to other students, or they want to see the trends in the learning for that week. So if you'll remember that, I think Kurt said that he wanted to say, this week, I noticed that people were struggling with this topic, or that everybody had a handle on this, etc. And if you will humor me for just a moment, I wanted to show you something in Brightspace that will allow you to provide that feedback to everybody in their grades report. So I'm going to share my screen. And this is a very messy grade book that I've used in a lot of different trainings, so please forgive how it looks. But for every single grade column in my grade book, if I wanted to provide that overall feedback to all of my learners, I could come to the chevron to the right of the title of the grade item itself and click Enter Grades. And if it's not open for you, you will see this little triangle here next to Show Details and Overall Feedback. And when you open that up, what you'll see is this feedback area that provides feedback to everybody. And you do have to be careful. This isn't individual feedback for a student. This is feedback for all the students on your roster to see in their grades report or their class progress. And this is where you can put the information about the I cannot type, about the learning trends, what people got right. what they got wrong, etc. And then when you save that, that's going to be published to all of the students who have published information, which can be really helpful then as you are trying to meet the preferences for your students. So again, just really quick, if you want to provide that overall feedback, you go to your grades area, click on the chevron to the right of the title. And by the way, it doesn't matter if you're in spreadsheet or standard view, you can do this from either view. Select that chevron, click enter grades, and then make sure that you expand out this menu right here where you can provide that overall feedback. Okay. Yeah, so that particular tidbit about the gradebook is not something we do in the basic gradebook training because there's just so much to cover, but that's one of the things that we cover in the advanced gradebook trainings, because we try to offer a whole bunch of tidbits and tricks to make your life easier in terms of the gradebook. So, all right, we are approaching the end of our time here today. And I didn't know if there was something that anybody else was struck with today that the students said, or any comments that you have to make about how maybe the resource that I'm building here, that we're going to be building this week, will be helpful to you. So I'm going to kind of open up the floor a little bit. Anybody? Jackie. Hi, Jackie.
Hi, Jamie. I think now is it Alice mentioned something about, when you're preparing for a final exam, sometimes there are materials that are no longer available in Brightspace. And it struck me because I'm still building courses, and I was there's every opportunity to put in a date for, when something is available and when it's no longer available, or when it's due, when it's, and I ended up, every time I would go back and look at my course, I would go in and try to see what it looked like from students' perspective, and I didn't see anything because I kept on putting these restrictions on dates when you could see a particular module or whatever. So then I threw all of that out. But it was interesting because at one point I wanted to ask you this question: is there ever a good reason to make something, aside from assignments and quizzes that you want to get in at a certain deadline, is there ever a good reason to make something no longer available during the calendared course term?
Good question. For the courses I teach, no. That doesn't mean that there aren't justifiable pedagogical reasons to do that. So I think it's up to the instructor to make that decision based on what they're intending with their course materials. That being said, I typically advise people, if you want to restrict access to it up to a certain date, like you don't go into this until we're ready for it. Okay. But for the most part, I coach people to keep things open. And it doesn't mean you have to keep them open for students to keep submitting work. Like there are ways, mechanisms that you can control what gets submitted, but to leave that information open for students to reflect back on, to go back. Like, I know that I need to go back over whole numbers in order to understand fractions. So I have to go back to that material, and that lets them take control of their own learning, right? Whereas if you closed it, they might have to come to you and say, hey, I need that open again, or maybe they just won't, and then they're going to struggle. But I don't know, does anybody else have any examples of when that might be something that would be helpful to the faculty and or the students, is closing it? And it's okay if there's not. I'm sure there are justifications. I don't want to say that you should never do this, but I would say that I generally coach people to leave it open. I had a course last semester that was running, not mine personally, but one that I was an instructional designer for, and they closed everything the day things were due. And the students did not like that. They wanted to be able to go back, and they were very frustrated that they couldn't. So I was just I always leave it open. All right. So someone's heading to golf. I'm very jealous. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us again today. I look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow. We're going to talk about online assessment and providing feedback. And I think that this, unfortunately, we only have one student signed up so far for tomorrow because 2 had to back out. But at any rate, this is something for all of us to discuss what's effective feedback online and when to provide it and when not to and how to provide it. So, all right, thanks everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow.